In 1945, Japan's industrial capacity was reduced to ash. National production sat at less than a third of its pre-war levels, leading Western economists to publicly declare the nation's economy entirely dead. A decade later, the global perception hadn't improved much. Made in Japan was widely understood as a warning label for cheap, flimsy products that would break after a few uses. Then the economy began expanding at a staggering 10% every single year. The catalyst was the adoption of radical quality control philosophies, championed by American statisticians like W. Edwards Deming, who had been largely ignored in their own country, but were treated as heroes in Tokyo. Japan surpassed its pre-war production levels by the late 1950s. This started a period of sustained 10% annual growth, transforming a devastated territory into a global trade leader in a few decades. By the 1980s, the profits from this new philosophy fueled a massive international buying spree. Japanese conglomerates began purchasing highly prized Western assets, sweeping up Pebble Beach golf courses, Rockefeller Plaza, and legacy American film studios. This sudden dominance triggered a cultural panic in the United States. Hollywood and popular media began depicting Japanese corporate managers as terrifying, ruthless adversaries, capturing the deep anxiety of the era. American executives reacted with sheer desperation. They began booking literal pilgrimages to Toyota and Sony factories, flying to Japan every month to reverse engineer their operations, sparking a massive boom in business literature back home. Western business leaders slowly realized they were losing a trade war to a highly synchronized operating system they'd barely comprehended. The sheer volume of hype eventually invited an academic backlash, with books like Anti-Theory Z arguing the Japanese threat was exaggerated. To cut through both the panic and the praise, we have to look directly at the objective mechanics of their corporate model. The first mechanical difference is lifetime employment. Japanese firms hire workers straight out of college and retain them until retirement. This directly contrasts the American hire and fire culture, making corporate headhunters virtually non-existent. Because the company commits to the employee for decades, it hires for general intellect rather than specific immediate skills. This allows for rigorous job rotation, where workers are continuously moved across entirely different departments to build a well-rounded perspective. Guaranteeing a worker's position for 30 years forces a corporation to stop exploiting immediate output and start cultivating long-term human capital. This chart shows Nenko, a hierarchical system where pay and rank are determined by age and tenure, not daily tasks. Because prestige is locked in, an executive can step down to the shop floor without losing status. Furthermore, virtually every future manager begins their career as a member of the labor union. By the time they reach executive leadership, they possess a deep, first-hand empathy for the daily realities of the workforce. By removing the frantic scramble for sudden promotions, Nenko eliminates internal competitive sabotage, creating a unified environment where progress is a collective effort. In traditional American firms, a single CEO dictates policy from the top down, forcing the company to adapt to sudden changes. Japan uses a radically different bottom-up approach. Ringi Sato requires unanimous consensus across every tier before a decision is finalized. Gathering this is slow, but execution is incredibly fast. Because everyone already agreed to the plan, there is zero internal resistance. Ringi Sato purposefully sacrifices executive speed to guarantee absolute organizational certainty and frictionless execution on the factory floor. The ultimate test of this system arrived in the 1990s. The long economic boom finally slowed, the stock market took a massive hit, and the panic gripping Western corporations began to subside. Yet, the foundational mechanics of the Japanese model held firm. Throughout the severe recession of the 90s, Japan managed to create over 3 million new jobs. By 1995, it maintained an incredibly low unemployment rate of 3.2% and remained the third largest trading nation on Earth. The long-term trajectory reveals the true scale of the achievement. In 1889, Japan's national income was roughly 55% of America's. By 1995, despite a devastating war and a major recession, it had reached 80%. By treating the corporation as a family and prioritizing collective responsibility, Japan built a national economy that reached 80% of the United States' income within 50 years of its total destruction. This organizational structure stabilized the workforce, but it represents only one part of the Japanese system. Their specific methods for manufacturing and quality control require their own dedicated study.